Alrighty, well, hello everyone, and welcome back to the show. We did not have a show last week. I don't remember why. We didn't have a show last week. Wait a second. But I'm sure I'll wait. Was that the butterfly thing?
You were giving a
I think
present.
did I give the butterfly talk last week?
You gave a presentation.
Yeah, that was last week. Okay, so I gave a presentation about butterflies, which was cool and fun, and everybody loved it, obviously. Joining me today is my host and co-host Peter.
Hello.
Welcome.
Hello.
And then we also have Nestlig, who is one of my editors.
Hello.
Welcome. Okay, sorry, I forgot to open it prior. I had other stuff that I was looking at. You can put people in timeout now. Okay, cool. Got it. All right, let's see. We got Dragon Spartan 90 official. Hello, Savage Answers and Jawist Cobra, Dalton, Pragmatic Crystal, and Smitty. Hello, all.
And
Welcome
RJ.
back.
And
Is
RJ.
and RJ. Hello.
And
Hello,
RJ.
it didn't update for me.
Yeah.
So yeah, last week I gave a talk about butterflies. I didn't realize that would be last week. I thought that it was like this week when I would have to give that presentation. But fortunately, I talked to one of the other people's, and Icarus, hello, one of the other people's who did the talk, and he said, "Oh no, that's tomorrow." So that was fun. It was good. It was a good time. So today we're going to be looking at a video about right. We're talking about all them lies in textbooks, and then
You're breaking up
it's not
a little
just
bit.
Jonathan Wells spinning his normal. Oh, am I okay now?
Yeah, now we can hear you.
Okay. And it's not going to be the normal, like, Jonathan Wells or Stephen Meyer or Casey Luskin saying there are lies in the textbook. No, this one's actually an actual, like, a high schooler who has allegedly found some lies in textbooks. When I was in high school, and Jamie E. and Dessel Drace, hello, welcome, guys.
Ooh, so that sounds very interesting. Like this old race dropped a new paper from the Moran's lab, and Moran is really, I think I've heard his name several times. Like he's more into the metabolism first side of the origin of life, and it seems from the title alone, it seems that metal and adenosine diphosphate can promote phosphorylation of nucleotides, according to this new paper. I will check it out.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I don't know why you're not a. I hadn't made you a moderator. Do that. Okay, there you go. So yeah, so she's claiming that there are lies in textbooks. When I was in high school, I was much more into like evolution and stuff than my average classmate. In junior year of high school, I read The Ancestor's Tale, the first edition. Then I read the second edition a few years later. So that was when I first encountered that book. I used to be an admin on this website called Dinopedia, and I spent a lot of time, writing pages on that and doing all sorts of stuff on there, and it was a lot of fun. And so I cared a lot more about like evolution stuff than most of my classmates did. And I had some creationist classmates, and I would argue with them, and that was fun. Not in biology though. I took AP biology, so we didn't have any creationists in there. But this video came at kind of an interesting time because right now in the U.S., I don't know about other countries, but here in the U.S., a thing that has been growing in popularity on the political stage is the concept of parental choice. So parental choice essentially just means that there are some parents who can decide that not only should their child not learn some subject, no child should be able to learn about some subject. Evolution being a popular one, or sex education is another one, of course.
Mhm.
And so, or like the history of slavery in the U.S. It's another one. So basically, anything that's like dirty liberal science, or any version of history that doesn't paint America as the best, just the top dog.
And
Shouldn't learn about it.
anything that makes them uncomfortable, basically.
Yeah, there was actually a post I saw on
But
Twitter.
remember, the liberals are the snowflakes. Remember
Correct.
that.
Yeah, no, it's the liberals who are the snowflakes. Yeah, there was actually a post I saw today that Sean responded to. He's the skull. You guys may have seen his videos. Very popular in like political sphere. And somebody posted a picture of this right wing Twitter account, of which there are many nowadays, and it shows the slave trade, the arrows like from Africa to like the Caribbean and the United States, and also North America, the colonies, and also South America, as well as like arrows from Africa to other places like the Middle East and Europe and places like that. And the account said, "Aha, they don't teach you about this in high school." And I saw that post and I thought, "Yeah, they did. What? What do you mean?"
They used to.
Yeah, they used to. I don't know if they still do, but yeah, you learn about. I mean, you learn about the slave trade in your various, for us, American history. We talk about how slaves were taken not just to the U.S., and of course, we had a whole war over slavery, which we also have lots of people who think that the Civil War was not about slavery, which is
It was about
baffling.
states' rights, Jackson. We all know that. The right,
right.
The right to own slaves.
Yeah, you're right. Exactly. Yeah, they don't want to go there. If you say a state's right to do what?
What exactly? Yeah.
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 And then we talk about slaves were taken to the Caribbean to make coffee. Coffee was a big export out of the Caribbean, and there was lots of slavery in there. I mean, the revolution in Haiti, and all that sort of stuff. And people in many of those countries are still very poor to this day because there was no infrastructure that was ever built because it was just a slave colony, and so there's not a lot of money that's gone out to them. And then also in South America, of course, we have lots of slave trading in South America, and so it's really strange that like on the one hand you have some conservatives who are like, well, we don't talk. Well, okay, I actually no, I guess it all is all in line. Basically, when we talk about like America has a past in which we held slaves and all sort of stuff. We talk about in our history, and conservatives kind of come back with, well, it's not just us. Well, yeah, of course it wasn't just us. It was lots of countries. That's not really the point. And we participated in this, and and all that.
But Your Honor, I may have murdered this guy, but I didn't invent manslaughter. I didn't invent it.
Yeah.
On a side note, since you have two Dutch people on the panel right here, there was a threat. There was a threat made to the slaves in the U.S. and pretty much everywhere else that if they didn't listen, they would sell them to the Dutch, who were probably the worst even. And we were taught that in school. So why American children shouldn't be learning about their own history, I don't get it. If we could, then surely they can.
Yeah, and there was a video I watched a while back. I can't remember who did it. The video was on it was called like neo-slavery or something like that. It was basically, the whole point was it was a history of slavery, an overview from like actual slavery to Jim Crow era like legislation, which made black people functional slaves, if not if not actual slaves, to the modern mass incarceration system, which again is just slavery. Like we have a provision for prison slavery carved out in our Constitution. It's slavery is not allowed except in the case of prisons. So, you know, yeah, it's very silly. Joel Duff you make a good point. Yeah, it sounds like something Nathaniel Jensen would say. He acts like he's unveiling insights into Native Americans, which none of us knew. RJ points out South American slave plantations were often owned by monastic orders. That's interesting. I didn't know that. But still, yeah.
Another fun fact. Another fun fact. Slavery was abolished in the United Kingdom in 2010.
Nice. I'm glad that they're so progressive.
They were, yeah.
Also about the Netherlands, we like even though it's of course a touchy subject, but we like the state of the Netherlands. They officially stated an apology in November of 2022. So it's I think it's a bit too better late than never, I guess. Better late than never, I guess.
Yeah, that's true.
It also has become like the abolishment of slavery has also become a national holiday called Kettikoti, I think it's pronounced. Yes.
Yeah.
But,
Kettikoti, yes.
Imagine how much better of a rehabilitation it would be if prisoners could earn minimum wage for their work. Yeah, if they could actually get paid to do work, that would be a lot nicer. I mean, there's so much prison reform that needs to happen. It's not even, it's just crazy. Anyway, the point where I was going with that was I also saw a video. It was an ad. I don't remember. It was for some liberal person, but this ad was for a libertarian textbook making company. So they make textbooks for primary education, and it was called like the Tuttle Twins or something like that. Well, in these textbooks, it was more of a like conservative bent on historical events. So one of the things they talked about was he made this huge point about about the Mayflower Compact, and that's just, I mean, that's not a conservative bent thing. I'm just saying. But he makes this big point about Mayflower Compact. It's like, oh, we spend 2 pages in our textbook talking about this, whereas in this normal school textbook you get like a paragraph. I mean, it's a decent paragraph, but still, it's like, okay, listen, you have to cover so much history in their course. You don't have time to talk about absolutely everything. Now, it'd be cool if you could, but you don't have time to cover everything. You have to cover the important things, and for other stuff, you just have to get the highlights, right? And I don't know. I just thought it was very
it's tricky because it's because like what is important is often subjective.
That's true.
And I think what people find important depends on their perspective. And I do think that when it comes to things like history, you need to review the opinion of many people to find what is important to them, and that's how we can teach history better, in my opinion.
Yes. Oh, 100%. And I believe we have a wild RJ in the chat, so he's a historiographer, so studying history is his wheelhouse. Yeah, I agree. It's just like for the Mayflower Compact in particular, it's like, yeah, it's a thing that I think is definitely worth mentioning, but I don't think you need to like ram every aspect of it down children's throats. You just need to kind of point out, okay, this was one of the first legal documents in the New World, and it had these functions, and like that's it. Okay, move on, next thing. There's so much to cover, and it's the same with science. When you teach a biology class, you can only get so much in a semester. There's only so much you can tell them, only so much that you can expect them to adequately remember. And I say this as a TA, right? There's the material they have to know for the test, and then there's all this other material that's really cool that we know about, but like they don't really care because they just want to pass the test, and that's fine. That's fine. I'm not begrudging them or anything. It's just you can only learn so much. And I also think that like being mad at a textbook for not covering something in extreme depth, but like framing it as though like the textbook is being deceptive or something. I think that's really weird, in my opinion. It's like you said, what is important historically is often is often subjective.
Yes.
Smitty says, I agree with Nestle. It's a sticky subject to prioritize. I agree with Jackson. The legal language of the Mayflower Compact is not the best candidate to prioritize. Yeah, right, exactly. It's like, yeah, just mention it, but like, move on. There's other stuff to talk about.
So I guess because we cannot. I doubt we can make it objective, but my proposed solution, or maybe at least a partial solution, is to have history or how history is taught be determined by as many people from many different backgrounds. That's how I would deal with that. Yes.
Right, and I mean, a lot of times, and I mean, what is often the case is the textbooks have to be voted on by a committee, right? You have a committee of teachers or of like people with degrees in education or whatever, and they collectively say, okay, this covers the necessary material. Even if it's not perfect, it covers everything well enough that it will suffice for these, barring like someone coming along and taking all of our edits and making it into a new textbook, which again is going to take like a year or so at least. So, and that's textbooks are also a scam in college. I just want to throw that out there.
Yes. Hot take, but very provable take. Yes.
Yeah.
Why do we have textbooks anymore? Yeah.
I think that makes it a cold take then, doesn't it? If it's a provable take, it's.
Anyway. Maybe. Yeah.
So
it's so hot. It's cold. It has become cold. Yeah.
It's so hot. It's cold. Yeah. So. Anyway, alrighty. I guess we'll jump into this and we'll see what lies this girl has found in the textbooks. Sound good?
One thing I just noticed that we have moved on from the material from the Discovery Institute.
We'll come back to it. Back to it. I just wanted to take a break.
So sure. Yes. Yeah. All right.
Because I saw this video that popped up in my Twitter feed multiple times. And so, or that the article for it did, and so I was like, okay, I want to take a look at this. So, yeah, that's why. Just because it happened to be out there. So,
okay. So, cue the exciting music.
ID the Future, a podcast about evolution and intelligent design.
Hope we don't get struck for copyright.
Welcome to the program. My name is Daniel Reeves. I serve as the Director of Education Outreach for Discovery Institute Center for Science and Culture, and I'll be the host of today's episode of ID the Future. Before I introduce our special guest today, I wanted to remind our listeners about a book that was published more than 20 years ago now.
You can.
Hey, can we pause for a second? I just noticed something I didn't think about before. Isn't it? It's a little odd to me that like the little girl in this picture is like a 50s like school or like this sort of like 50s dress. Well, is that not weird?
No,
I wonder if that's
I don't know.
No, I don't think so, because if you follow ID and indeed creationists, that is about the time that they go to for their scientific papers. I mean, so yeah, I think it's
everything started going wrong then.
Yeah, I think it's very appropriate to have.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, I mean,
they're like, we want to return to a simpler time, and so it's just the like girl from the 50s is their ideal of the simpler time. You're right. She looks like she's from Fallout. Yeah, right. Yeah, I don't know. That struck me very. It's like you couldn't have a picture of like modern kids on there or something. It had to be okay.
Yeah,
anyway,
they are millennials nowadays. So yeah.
She also doesn't look like she's happy to learn. She looks.
That's how I look when I have to read ID stuff too.
Kind of annoyed. So yeah. Okay, continue.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
No. Sure. But which remains no less relevant to today's discussion. The book is entitled Icons of Evolution, Science or Myth? Why much of what we teach about evolution is wrong. And it's authored by biologist Jonathan Wells back in 2000.
Pause. Okay. For reference, we talked about this last time, or time before, whenever it was. Whenever we talked about this, about the moths, the moths don't land on things is a Jonathan Wells trope. Just remember, when they mention Jonathan Wells, he's the idiot who said moths don't land. That's him. Don't let that fact out of your mind.
Did he say they don't land, period? Or did he say they don't land on trees specifically?
He said they don't land on trees. Just remember, he's an idiot. And he is...
Yeah. Either way it's false. Yeah, either way it's false.
It is irreconcilably stupid. Like moths are little perpetual motion machines or something, I guess. I don't know. But like, do you remember when we looked over it and he said the part of the story is fake because moths don't land on trees? And we were like, well, then do you think that they land? Do you think like
they land on clouds?
Right. They light as a feather. They land on clouds. Yeah. It's or the implication that like soot didn't cover anything else other than trees. Like these are brain dead takes.
It's a well-known fact that moths are strictly urban creatures. They don't venture out into the wilderness. That's
correct.
Not where they hang out.
If you bother to like stop at a garden for just any length of time and you see all the little moths and butterflies flitting around, you notice that the moths and butterflies never land. Not once ever.
Nope.
Yep.
That's anyway, why we find them in the upper layers after the flood, Jackson. Because they don't land. See,
right.
I can creationist too.
Yeah. We probably do it better than the creationists.
Yeah, probably. We do.
In this book, he exposed many of the exaggerated claims, sometimes even deceptions, I would say, that have persisted in discussions of biological origins for decades, despite evidence to the contrary. If you haven't read it, you absolutely should. And then, if the findings presented in that book weren't shocking enough, Dr. Wells released a follow-up book.
Can I say I'm already annoyed by the voice? It's something you shouldn't do. You should. It's ad hominem, but he's got a very, very, I don't know, snarky voice.
Well, I would say he has a better voice than me, at least.
Well,
not the high bar. Not the high bar.
Everybody has a better voice than me, but I mean, yeah, no. Maybe it's just me.
15 years later, in 2017, entitled Zombie Science, in which he convincingly demonstrated that many of these, quote, icons of evolution continue to persist undaunted or undead, you might say, in a long list of mainstream textbooks. It's now been about 8 years since Zombie Science, and you may be wondering, has anything changed? Has the accuracy of teaching on evolutionary theory improved in standard textbooks? Well, our guest today is a recent high school graduate by the name of Natalie, and I've invited Natalie onto the program today because I think she has a unique story to tell our listeners. Natalie, first of all, thanks for your willingness to jump on the air today.
I am glad it's not actually the guy of the book. Like it's not. I forgot his name. What was he called again? The one on Icons of Evolution.
Oh, Jonathan Wells.
Yeah, I'm glad it's not Jonathan. I'm glad.
Well, and so the funny thing about this is like Jonathan Wells did not expose anything. He lied. He lied about many things in Icons of Evolution and then again in Zombie Science. All he does is just, oh, wait, hold on. Did he say, he said Zombie Science came out in 2017. And then he said that was 8 years ago. So we're in 2025, guys. We zipped into the future. This podcast actually won't drop for 2 more years, believe it or not.
I thought
that's so funny. I didn't even catch that. Thank you, RJ.
I thought I heard.
Was maybe an earlier version? Published, or is it the latest version? I don't know about.
Well, he said Reeves said that Zombie Science was published in 2017. He said that was 8 years ago. Whack. So this is actually in the future. Okay. So Natalie is not. She hasn't actually graduated yet. She'll be graduating in 2 years.
Oh yes.
So I have to say, Onjer, my laugh is fantastic, and also I heard Zager and Evans, so it must be 25 in the year 2025. No one knows what I'm talking about because no one's that old.
Dalton also makes a good point. We can't get copyright struck for this material because it doesn't exist yet.
He's got a point. He's got a point. Okay.
If we do, I'm
gonna
put in... Okay, what would you say?
I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to cut you out.
Oh no, you're fine. I was just making a stupid joke. Go ahead.
I was just saying that there is a fair point about textbooks being behind a few years.
Sure.
Of science, but of course the point they will be making is probably dishonest.
Right.
It's
different. There's a difference between saying like, if a textbook says like, well, we don't have a fossil transition between like, Panderichthys and Acanthostega, but like this is after Tiktaalik was found, so you have to wait a few years for the textbook to say, okay, now we have Tiktaalik between those two. So in that sense, yeah, the textbook is behind because Tiktaalik had not yet been incorporated, and that happens. That's fine. That's also how college textbooks make all their money, because they update it every goddamn semester, and they're like, yes, you have to pay $400 for it again. And it's like when the only thing they changed was like a paragraph on page 250 or something like that. Like that's it. That's why we say textbooks are a scam.
Yes, as Smitty says, is textbooks being behind due to printing? Yeah, we can do it digitally and for free essentially, because there is no reason to.
Well, the company would still charge the students, so they would like Campbell or Holt or whoever would still charge the students like, okay, you have to pay $100 to get the code, like your one-time code to use a textbook for a semester or something.
Yeah,
like that. But you're right. That would be fixed.
I think it is a scam. I think it's a scam.
Oh, 100%. But Smitty's right. It would be fixed by having the textbooks be digital instead of printed. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yes. All right, we can keep going.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
Awesome. Okay, so a little over a month ago, you reached out to our team to let us know about an AP research project that you had completed during your senior year of high school. And as I recall, you said that you took the opportunity to evaluate the scientific accuracy of a new biology textbook that was being proposed for use at your high school, focusing on the way that it presents the theory of evolution. Is that right?
Yes, that is right. Yeah.
Okay.
Just evolution?
So fascinating. So it's been a busy month for me since you emailed, and I'm going to be totally honest, I haven't actually read your research paper.
Okay.
In all fairness, it's like 40 pages long, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No
Jesus.
Can barely find the time to read the morning news these days.
Yeah.
That said, I'm really excited to hear about the project from you directly. It's been many years since I've waded into a high school biology textbook, and I'd love to just hear an update from you on how they've changed, or if they've changed in recent years. And I figured our listeners too would be fascinated by this. So let's dive in.
Yeah.
So let me start with the question of, like, how did you learn that this new textbook was being evaluated for possible use at your local high school?
Okay.
Yeah, so it's actually pretty interesting because I went into this project and I didn't know that we had received new biology textbooks. I just knew that I wanted to look at the most current version of, evolutionary context in textbooks, but I didn't know that we had brand new ones. So I went into my old biology teacher's classroom and I asked her if
Pause. Off the bat, I think it's unusual. Like that, just evolution? That's literally the only thing in the entire book you wanted to look at? Like, you're not curious about how it teaches...
It can be the case. There are books that focus mostly on evolution, right?
Well, okay, if she's in high school, and I, as the only American here, because you Dutch are taking over my show... there's not you really don't get that much evolution in high school. You don't. I took biology and AP biology, and there's very little evolution in there. You get predominantly what you focus on is essentially what you do when you take your first 2 semesters of biology in college. It's like molecular genetics, right? So, you talk about Mendelian inheritance and all that fun stuff. Then you talk about cells, so you go deep into the cell literature. Then you talk about like zoology, botany, you talk about human anatomy, and somewhere in there, usually in the zoology section, you get a sprinkle of evolution. Like, that's it. You get a sprinkle of it. I actually, just like a month or so ago, I looked at the standards for teaching science in middle and high school, and there's really nothing in our curriculum right now for like teaching the age of the Earth. There's none. The only evolution like standard that's in the current curriculum for Louisiana, at least, is that you discuss how variations arise and then how natural selection works, and that's kind of it.
Oof.
I mean, seriously, like that's it. You don't talk about speciation. There is no. I forgot to mention ecology. Also, you do talk about ecology.
This is just for high school, right?
Middle and high school, yeah, both together. Like, there's no. Oh, we're hearing weird noises. Never mind, that's gone. Yeah, there's no speciation, no like history of the Earth. Although I believe we went over like a little bit of history of the Earth stuff when I was in high school. But there's not a lot, and so it's really intriguing to me that like such a small portion. And I went to a pretty good high school. Dalton and I, we went to a pretty good high school. I think it's the best high school in Louisiana, and so it's well funded and everything. Our teacher is by no means a creationist or anything like that. Evolution is just not a subject you learn very much about. Then it makes me sad. I wish it were. That'd be cool. But you do have to balance evolution with these other fields, right? With zoology, botany. Again, botany, very small. We like barely touch on botany at all. A lot of it is because a lot of it is like preparing students for like becoming nurses and whatnot. I remember a huge chunk of our biology class was like human anatomy, a huge chunk of it, because they recognize that, especially in the city where I live, here I am doxing myself, especially in the city where I live, the medical field is like one of the biggest jobs here. We got a bunch of hospitals. We have a couple of very high tech hospitals, very well funded, and so yeah, lots and lots and lots of people go into the medical field here. We even have at least one teaching hospital, and so not a lot of plant stuff. There was some animal stuff, not a lot of evolution.
Do they teach probably bacterial resistance evolution? It's probably one of the most applicable to the medical field. There, yes.
Yeah, we like I said, we cover like a bit about like natural selection and stuff, but not much. And even in college, aside from like taking a straight up evolution class, you don't really learn all that much about evolution in most of your classes. Which again, sad. Evolution is the bedrock of biology, and you don't talk about most of it. And if you did, maybe that would help students like grasp relationships among organisms better. I don't know, just a thought. So anyway, I've been talking.
I would aside from natural selection, I would teach genetic drift and also include the basics of phylogenetics, like classic terminology and such. I would teach that as well in high school.
100%. When I have like review sessions with my students for their tests, one thing I do is I typically will draw out phylogenetic trees, and then I can explain to students, this is why these groups share these characteristics, but these groups don't. And because in my mind, if I can visualize a phylogenetic tree, that puts everything into perspective. It's like, oh, I get it now. But if you don't, if you just approach everything as like everything is totally separate and unconnected, then it makes it harder to remember like which facts are assigned to which groups. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So anyway, okay.
I could check one out, a textbook out, and take a look at it. And she let me know that they actually had a new one that they were trialing. So I found out just by going into her classroom, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is like such a cool coincidence that I get to look into brand new textbooks.
That's perfect. Okay, so what inspired you to approach this study in the first place? Did you already have some idea that textbooks in general were kind of falling short of a satisfactory accuracy on the subject?
What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so I didn't really know going into this class what I was going to do. I just knew that I wanted to do something with the fossil record and evolution because that was sort of the area of intelligent design and apologetics in general.
Oh, God.
I am not that well versed in, and I'll just preface this by saying I'm definitely not an expert, but I know a lot more.
Pause. Okay, so she went in as an intelligent design person. I want to point that out. I want to make that very clear. She did not go into this as I'm just a student. Like, she didn't even try to pull the I'm just an uninformed student. I'm not taking sides, and it happens that, this is a lot. No, she went in as an intelligent design proponent. So honestly, I'm surprised she's not a homeschool kid. Honestly. But so she's getting, well, that's the thing. She's not, Zach, she's not just inquiring. She is actively looking for this because she's intelligent design proponent. So yeah, at least she didn't try with the pretense. It's kind of refreshing, honestly. Kind of refreshing. Oh, from Vandalia, 1998, 499. Are the lies in the textbooks that the creationists wrote? Probably. They probably are. Yeah. We can keep going.
Now than I did going into this. And yeah, I just remember when I was a freshman taking biology that a lot of things didn't really line up, and there were a lot of drawings, like the embryo drawings, that just seemed like they shouldn't be in there anymore because I had heard stories.
So she literally just read.
We just went over this a few weeks ago.
So she literally just read Icons of Evolution and then looked at her textbook and said, "Oh my God, it's true! They talk about the peppered moth experiment. Oh."
Or she's watching Kent Hovind videos at home.
Or she's watching Kent Hovind videos. Yeah. Savage answers in
on VHS
for $5 says, Jackson, I believe you misspoke. The correct term is C design proponentists. You're correct.
Yep.
As always. C design proponentists. Yeah. Yeah, 100%. Okay. Oh. So yeah, so she's just watching like Kent Hovind videos or reading Jonathan Wells or something like that. And
she's watching Kent Hovind videos on VHS tapes.
I'm pretty sure they came out
in the
of
year of our Lord 2023. Yeah.
Not on Betamax. Nestle. I think.
No. The old videotapes, like the old school.
I know, but you said you said VHS, and so Betamax was the one that didn't really make it to the world standard. So.
Yes.
All right. Anyway,
okay.
Keep going.
Yes.
Accurate, and like I'll say, my faith is huge to me, and so it kind of just all fell into place. I feel like God's.
Okay.
Shock.
Okay. My faith is Okay. So now we know that she's not an ID proponent. She's a creationist. Because you don't need faith to be an ID person.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. It was to be expected.
Provision was really involved in this whole research process, so I feel like the textbook idea, it just kind of came to me. Yeah.
Okay, great. So you had some interest already
after watching
in
Kent Hovin's video,
how that relates to intelligent design, and even your faith. That's great. So
can I point out that she also says "yeah," like Hovind does?
Yeah.
Instead of yeah.
Yes, queen.
I mean,
yeah.
Could be a coincidence. We don't know.
Isn't that an accent in the US? Like a specific accent?
Well, yes and no. I mean, you can say it, but also some people say y'all like jokingly. Like I'll say it like y'all. RJ also makes a good point. Keep an eye out for whether Natalie or Reeves ever bump into map of time issues. I'm gonna bet right now that they don't. That's gonna be my bet. All right. Anyway.
Before we get into this particular textbook at your high school and into kind of your methods and your findings on that that book,
quote.
I wanted to just ask you in general about some of the background research that you did on the teaching of evolution in textbooks.
Also curious.
What did you find as kind of a general trend when you were doing that background research?
Yeah, so the study that I used that was the most closely related to what I did was done in Brazil. So it doesn't totally speak to what it's like in American textbooks, but they found that more often than not, the textbooks, especially in the chapter of evolution, were inaccurate and they led students to make wrong biological conclusions. And then I also read a study that was done.
Pause. Brazil. I'm looking this up. Brazil, evolution in textbooks study. I'm curious about this. If anybody, Jamie E., I saw you earlier. I know you're hiding in there. If you happen to know what she's talking about, I would be very curious. Here's one. Brazilian high school biology textbook, main conception. Oh, no. Oh, no. Oh, you guys, you're going to love this. Do you want to bet whether or not she's being accurate in her description of that study? Do you guys want to take a bet?
I'll bet she's not honest because she doesn't strike me as honest.
What?
No. Sorry. I was also looking up myself. Like, what did you find?
So
the Brazilian high school biology textbook, main
conceptual problems in evolution and biological diversity. Yeah, abstract. Yes. In 2005, the Brazilian government established a national evaluation program in order to evaluate didactic material to be acquired and distributed to 6.9 million students from public high schools. Publishers submitted 20 high school biology books and collections that were analyzed by a team of faculty members from several public universities and high school teachers gathered by the Brazilian Ministry of Education. This process employed a set of criteria and excluded 9 of those books or collections. The conceptual problems related to the study of evolution and biological diversity found in excluded materials are presented here. They were grouped into 11 categories, 8 of which are very likely to lead to persistent wrong understandings of scientific ideas and difficulties in future learning. Some problems, as that of presenting evolution as a deterministic process, were previously reported in other studies focusing on evolution teaching. Others, such as conflation between organization levels, were not specifically reported, but are likely to be widespread. Okay, so this study is not about, it's not about people lying about evolution. It's about the textbooks misunderstanding or incorrectly explaining how evolution works, which is very different from what she's doing.
Yeah. It's perhaps like mistakenly promoting the idea of orthogenesis.
Yeah. Here's an example. Here's an example. Just randomly from this paper. I just scrolled down to page whatever this is 4 or something.
Okay. It's a different language. Quote. I can't read. Yeah. Oh.
Quotes. Fortunately for you, I speak Portuguese. No, just kidding.
Oh.
It's in English.
All right.
Here, I'll link it. I'll link it in our side chat. Some materials also presented imprecise or wrong diagnoses for higher taxa. The description of kingdom Protista as including, quote, among others, the eubacteria and cyanobacteria or photosynthesizing bacteria, close quote, treats Protista organisms actually included in the kingdom Monera, the definition of plant as the kingdom formed by eukaryotic chlorophyll-bearing beings, is unable to distinguish plants from organisms included in Protista and defining plants based on the presence of evident reproduction organs and vascular system wrongly excludes bryophytes and pteridophytes, although both were treated as plants in the very textbook. Okay, so yeah, okay, so no, this is not about, it's not saying that like what she's saying, what Natalie here is saying is like the textbooks are lying about how evolution works, right? Like, because remember, Jonathan Wells argues that the peppered moth experiment doesn't actually demonstrate evolution because it's full of holes, right? He's like, oh, we don't actually know that moths land on trees, which, yeah, we do. It's stupid. Or like arguing that the Haeckel embryo drawings are all frauds when they aren't, right? Those are the things. Here's an example. All the just another random example. All the remaining important mistaken definitions were related to the study of evolution. Evolution itself was wrongly defined in textbook 102338 as, quote, every process of changing of living beings along time, close quote, and in the teacher handbook as, quote, every process of changing that occurs in one organism, allowing it to better fit to the environment, close quote. The first statement is unable to discriminate evolution from other biological processes of temporal change like ontogeny, growth and aging, phenological cycles, and ecological succession. The second statement is even worse, since it describes a population process as if it took place at the level of the individual. Again, we observe a conflation of organization levels, detrimental to students' understanding and future learning. Moreover, evolution was explained as if it were restricted to adaptive processes when it is not. The same book affirmed that plant physiology, quote, encompasses all transformations that occur in plants, close quote. Again, a statement that is unable to distinguish among essentially different temporal processes. So, yeah, again, she's lying or maybe misinformed. I lean towards lying because she's doing the same thing that Jonathan Wells does and the same thing that Daniel Reeves does. Nestlig, like you said, evolution as a linear process leading to progress and perfection. Right there. Yeah, exactly right. Mm-hmm. Orthogenesis. None of these, it's not about it. They're not, it's not like, there you go. There's the English one. If you want to put that in the side, in the live chat, you can also.
All right.
What Jonathan Wells says and what Natalie's saying versus what this paper is about, like, I agree. This paper is 100% correct. That does not mean evolution is false. Jonathan Wells believes evolution is false. Let's not lose sight of that, okay? Especially as we go forward.
Right, it's really stupid or dishonest to mistake correcting misconceptions on evolution as if it's debunking evolution. That's the big difference.
Yep, and that's basically what she's doing. Yeah.
Also, Brian Stevens said it's like a bad screenplay of a bad radio show taken from a bad storybook. It does sound like it's a scripted play. I could be wrong, but I don't know. I have this weird feeling that it might just be completely staged.
It might be. It's entirely possible. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. They'll do anything.
Yes.
For views, So I really wouldn't be surprised.
And I see also other mistakes, like here on page like what page is that? On page 9, it mentions conflation of different levels. Like it says that some common mistakes include the statements such as the embryo develops inside the nucleus, evolution occurs in the organism, and evolutionary cycle as referring to the life cycle. So they're very big mistakes. Yeah.
Do we want to bet that she's going to be like, yeah, so actually here's how we can help these textbooks to teach evolution better? Or is she going to be like, no. Actually all evolution's false? No.
Yeah. I'm going with the second one. Let's see.
Yeah.
In America, it was super interesting to me because it spoke to teaching evolution versus teaching creationism in the classroom. And they found that the students that were taught both evolution and...
Hold on. Wait a second. Did it?
Told you.
I didn't see anything about... Maybe I didn't go down far enough. Hold on. I didn't look at the whole document. Let me look. Creation. No, there's one... Okay, there's no reference in the actual body. There's an article that they cite at the bottom is about it. But no, this has nothing to do with creationism at all. Nothing whatsoever. What are you talking about? Okay, we can keep going.
Creationism, so not totally throwing evolution out the window, came away with a better understanding of both topics than students that are just taught evolution. It allowed them to kind of make a more well-rounded perception of their worldview and how they view their origin of life. So yeah, those were the main studies, and then there was another one that evaluated college students, so kind of like upper division schooling, and they found that students had the totally wrong idea of evolution, even in the baseline definition, and that it related back to their faulty textbooks.
Okay, pause. Okay, but again, this is because the textbooks were teaching the process of evolution incorrectly, not because they're lying about how evolution works, right? It's so dishonest. What they're doing is so dishonest. They're, on the one hand, Daniel Reeves is like promoting a book by Jonathan Wells, which says that textbooks are explicitly lying to students by using fraudulent data, right? Like the Haeckel's embryos, which aren't fraudulent. And she's saying, here are these studies that show these textbooks are incorrect. And they are actually incorrect, and they do need to be fixed. But they are also teaching incorrect information about evolution. So both the textbooks, the Brazilian textbooks, and Jonathan Wells are both wrong about evolution, but in different ways. Just want to point that out.
I'm kind of surprised.
It's so frustrating. There's so much sleight of hand going on here.
I'm kind of surprised how obviously it is that she's a creationist, not an ID proponent, because she keeps talking about creationism and how they need to teach both sides of it. And this in ID the future? I mean...
Right. Yeah. Listen, Peter, they're finally comfortable enough to just come out and say that they were creationists all along.
Yeah.
That they were never actually... It wasn't ever about, like, the science. They were always just clandestine creationists. I mean... C-design proponentsists, right?
And the whole idea of ID is to make it legal to teach it in schools. That's basically it. Yes. So, but the fact that they're just that they're just coming out with it, how is it that students have to decide which is correct? Aren't they in a school to learn what is correct?
Right. Well, and to some extent, I think students should have to take classes where they have to are taught, these are methodologies for how to learn information. But I don't think you should teach creation. There are no merits to creationism at all. There just aren't. Creationism exists solely because the organizations that Answers in Genesis, ICR, are well funded, and they know how to lie and pass off their lies really well.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. There's no truth to creationism whatsoever.
And the only reason to teach about creationism in schools is to point out their flawed methods on how they present their in air quotes science. That is why they should teach it.
And honestly, I don't want creationism discussed in the science classroom at all. If you want to talk about it, you can talk about it in the religion or a philosophy class or religion class or something.
Mm-hmm.
You can do comparative religions and talk about fundamentalism in Christianity or Islam or whatever, but not in the science classroom. The science classroom is not here to debate religious ideology, which is what creationism is, and intelligent design is too. That's not what science is for. Science is about taking the evidence that we have and using it to reach conclusions.
I would be for having a special class on creationism and have textbooks written by Harun Yahya on how Allah created everything.
They can have
I mean, so they can decide.
They can do the fishing lure as a bug.
Yes.
The anatomy of an insect. So there's a hook on the end of it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That was a comparison between two flies that existed. One was a prehistoric fly, and then they had this fly that is still common, and that was the one with the hook in it. I think we'll have to ask PZ. He's got the book. He was the one who showed me the picture that is in this giant book that he sent out to several people all across the world.
Right.
So
yeah,
I'm really jealous. I would love to have that one. Just to go through it.
He sent one to Richard Dawkins too.
Yeah. Oh well. Yeah.
Okay. It's so weird. The book. These books are massive, and they are like highly expensive material, and they obviously did so little to actually check what the image is even about. Like they mistook an image of a lure as an insect. Just
keep in mind.
Just tells you like at one end, yeah.
Keep in mind, if you don't pay taxes, then you have a lot of money to spend on books to send for free all across the world. I mean, there's a reason why he's now he's got a sentence for over 8,000 years in prison.
Okay, but that wasn't for tax evasion. That was for like sex crimes or whatever. Also, RJ says he has a PDF of the book. That's what the charges are. Also, RJ says he has a PDF of the book if you want it. So
I want it, James. Please send me a link or PDF. I'd love to see that.
Okay, so learning about alternative theories for origin of life actually help them to evaluate the claims of evolution better and to come away with a better understanding even of the standard mainstream theory, right?
Yeah.
Okay, well that's fascinating. Do you think that from what you looked at, do you think that this is
I don't know what study they are referring to there. Like they refer to two studies, the one from Brazil and another one that showed that students who were taught both, quote unquote, both sides of the controversy were better at judging. Like I cannot find, I don't know what study they are referring to, and I cannot find it.
Yeah, I also don't know.
All right. Oh, we can continue. Maybe
you
will
as
mention.
You've identified it. Yeah. Is isolated to biology textbooks, or did you find that it was also true of other STEM areas as well?
Yeah, I'm not totally sure. I guess that's a little bit controversial as well, just because whether or not you believe textbooks are always accurate or if they have an agenda, maybe. I haven't looked too much into history textbooks, but I always, I personally am just a little suspicious of the content sometimes.
Okay. How much do we want to bet that in like a couple of years she's going to be back on with like, I looked in this history textbook and they said the Civil War was about slavery, but I believe it's about states' rights. This textbook clearly has an agenda.
Yeah.
Guarantee, 100%. It's going to be a few years. She's going to be on PragerU in like less than a year talking about the lies in textbooks. I'm calling it. My last prediction about PragerU was correct. So I'm calling this one. I give her less than a year. They love having young people on there. They love, which I mean, because young people appeal to the younger audience. So yeah, guarantee.
And those are the ones you want to target.
Yep.
I really, the main focus of this was just biology textbooks.
Yeah, makes sense. I definitely think anyone who has read Icons of Evolution, like I mentioned at the beginning, zombie science definitely develops a healthy kind of critical eye when they're looking at any textbook, and I know from my personal experience that evolutionary theory makes its way into lots of different subject areas, which is always fascinating to me. How you can frame science, you can frame chemistry, math, all sorts of different things in kind of an evolutionary worldview. Okay, so you decided to see how your textbook compares to some of these overall trends.
But like, they're not teaching high schoolers population genetics. You're teaching, like, you take for me personally, you take like algebra 1, algebra 2, geometry, pre-cal, maybe calculus in like high school, right? Those are your main, maybe statistics, right? Like those are your main math classes, but like no one's learning population genetics. I also know chemistry was never, or evolution was never mentioned in my chemistry class in high school, like at any point. So I mean, obviously chemistry.
I think the only example is maybe perhaps the Hardy-Weinberg equation.
Well, but that's in.
Getting familiar with, yeah.
Yeah, I guess, but I mean, like that's in biology though. You learn about that in biology class.
Yeah.
In like biochem though, there's an emphasis, or they do talk about evolution in biochem, but that's when you take that's like a college course. You know, that's late, like undergrad, maybe early grad, something like that. Not as a high school student. Anyway,
I had a flashback to a video by a woman called Mackenzie Chung Fagan. Should math be taught in schools? Which was basically a response to the Miss USA question: should evolution be taught in schools? It's probably the most brilliant response video I've ever seen. If you haven't seen it, just go on YouTube and type in "should math be taught in schools." First result will come up. That's the one you need to watch. It's brilliant.
It should be up to the parents' choice as to whether their child is taught math in school, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I'm curious, what kind of methodology did you use to go about this?
Yes.
So I use something called comparative analysis, and it's pretty much just what it sounds like. It's when you take two pieces or more of different information and you just compare them side by side to see how they compare and contrast with each other.
But what were you comparing?
So the two different pieces of information I used was the chapter of evolution, and then what I called credible outside sources that represented the most up-to-date discoveries in evolution.
Okay. And then within evolution, did you focus on particular areas, particular lines of evidence?
Yeah, so I focused on the fossil record and genetic and molecular biology in particular. Part of this was because I had a word limit in my paper, so I couldn't focus on all of the subtopics in the textbook.
Wait a second.
There were so many, like...
Wait, pause. Wait, hold on a second. Okay, so her methodology is she compared a textbook with technical literature? Is that the implication here? She said
it's
credible.
I think she's going,
She said credible, up to date, or the most like credible and most up to date information about the field, which I would imagine is the technical literature, right? I don't think, unless she's saying she compared a textbook against like another textbook. I don't know. But that seems to be the implication.
Yeah, which takes a while to get into the textbooks.
Right, but also like you're telling me she is reading like research and comparing it against the textbooks and then came to the intelligent design people and told them about this. I'm very skeptical. I'm extraordinarily skeptical about like the the next thing she's gonna say.
I called it. It sounds scripted. It sounds like the whole thing is written out. It's acting a play.
She said she had a word limit, so I think she was like writing a paper for class, and then she also sent it to them. I guess she was like proud of it, so she sent it off to them. But also remember, she has already mischaracterized that paper on Brazilian textbooks.
Yeah.
So she's already lied about the data at one point. We've already called her out on one thing. So how certain are we that she's going to accurately represent this other data that she's found? All right. Well, anyway.
Embryology and anatomy. There's so many, but I focused on those two because I kind of felt like they're really strong pillars for Darwin's theory. And so if you can find really strong evidence supporting them or ways that they don't line up, it means a lot for Darwinian evolution. So I focused on those two in particular.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay,
Peter,
so
you're right. This is scripted.
So you're looking at genetics, looking at fossil record, and you're comparing the way that it's presented in this particular textbook with the most credible kind of presentation of these topics that you can find on internet sources,
From who?
things like that, right?
Yes.
Okay. And how did you
So,
go
like,
about
Wikipedia?
kind of
I mean, I'd be fine with
determining what
that.
would be a credible source on this
Yeah.
subject?
That
That's a
was
great
definitely
question.
one of the most vital parts in my process because, you know, it's an AP
Right.
class, so everything you do has to be super credible. So I kind of created a list of criteria, and I used Owl
Okay.
Purdue and other
Okay.
websites that are generally
Sure.
good guidelines for creating a credible study in order to make sure that my
Sure.
sources were, you know, they were reputable. So I
Okay.
made sure that they didn't have religious affiliation, just to keep my research
Okay.
as objective as possible, that they had that the website or organization had strong ties to biology or chemistry,
Okay.
and just things like that to make sure that they knew what they were doing. And the Discovery
So
Institute
far, so
met
good.
all of those expectations. And so
Oh,
it was a
no!
huge, it was just a really big
No!
help that I
Are
had that
you
to go
kidding
to
me?
because they
Pause
speak
it.
to everything.
That's great, yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm
Peter,
assuming
pause.
that, you know, as you were finding your...
Okay. Folks. She said, yes, she means the Discovery Institute, a patently religious organization that it was literally based on like wedging its their culture war narrative into the current existing culture so that evolution will be pushed out and you could get Judeo-Christian values into the culture. That's literally why the Discovery Institute exists. It is inherently a religious organization. And that's her source? Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Jesus Christ. Okay. Sorry I'm so worked up about this. I cannot believe, no, I can believe it actually. I can believe that this girl who already had a religious background would somehow magically find her way to the Discovery Institute, and that's the most credible, groundbreaking research she can find. Not the technical literature, not other textbooks, not other works by actual people who work in the field, the Discovery Institute. Just amazing. Amazing.
Well, Jackson,
wonderful stuff.
If she had mentioned answers in Genesis and Kent Hovind, that would given the plot away, I think.
I guess you're right. You know, my mistake. Okay, we can keep going.
Your credible sources on this subject, that you are finding both those that support standard evolutionary theory as well as those that dissent from that. So were you able to find,
she said her only source was
sources that you felt were credible on both sides of the debate?
Yeah, I did. I definitely had to do a lot of digging. You know, you can do like Google Scholar or put .edu at the end of your search, and it helps come up with more reputable sources.
Do you know?
I had to do a lot of digging though, because.
Do you know who none of those sources cite? Do you know what Google Scholar, Wikipedia, Owl Purdue, do you know what they never cite? They literally never cite the Discovery Institute because it is as a dogmatic, religious, anti-scientific organization. That's all it is. Of course they don't cite it. She had to go out of her way to find like ID stuff to just wedge in here, because if she were just looking at like Google Scholar, for instance, or Wikipedia, you know, which is a good source. Don't let people tell you Wikipedia is not a good source. It is a good source. Not like, I mean, it's a good starting place. They have sources at the bottom that you can use as your references, but don't use Wikipedia as your reference.
It's a good source to find sources.
Right, exactly. But like the Discovery Institute, God's sakes. Okay. Anyway, we can keep going.
Most of the articles that I found were pro-evolutionary, and you know, you can take that as you like, because sometimes, you know, search engines might be a little bit biased in what they produce, but I was able to find things from both perspectives. And oftentimes I would find articles that had a more anti-evolutionary or challenging evolution perspective, and they would have links in that article to places like Science or Nature that are generally seen
that they lie about,
pretty objective and really accepted in the
pause,
scientific community that
pause.
spoke.
Nope, they are lying about those articles. We know this because all of us here have read articles like that. Heck, when I wrote the scripts or co-authored the scripts for Professor Dave, we had to read a crap load of articles written by Gunter Beckley. Now, Gunter Beckley is an actual invert paleontologist. He cites a lot of of actual legit scientific articles. He cites Nature, PNAS, Science, cell and molecular biology, all that sort of stuff. He cites all these, which are credible sources, but he lies about the contents of them. Okay? So, for instance, a lie that I caught him in was one of the easiest ones I go to is he says Icaria, or the researchers who discovered Icaria did not consider that it's a protist. And he cites a paper in, I think it was Cell Biology. However, the researchers explicitly cited that paper and said why Icaria cannot be a protist, because it doesn't fit the morphology, the ichno taxa associated with it does not meet the criteria of being a protist, and he just lies about it. He just says they didn't consider it when they did, and they explain why it's not a protist. But he cites Cell Biology. So if you're someone like Natalie who comes along and is a high school, no shade on her, she's just a high schooler, right? She's got time to learn about all these subjects. I don't expect her to be an expert in paleontology and genetics at like 18. That's not reasonable. But if you actually stop, pause for a moment, look at what they're doing, look at what is happening on these sites, compare what they're saying about the articles versus what the article actually says, and then you've actually done the research. You've actually looked at their citation and seen that, okay, does it say what they're saying it says? Because if it doesn't, then they're lying. Right? And Gunter Beckley does that time and time and time again. And we showed that over and over and over in the Professor Dave videos. Like, they all do this. All creationists, all intelligent design proponents, they all do this. They all lie about the data.
And she also did it here with the Brazil study. Like, the Brazil study doesn't say what she says, or it doesn't say what she portrays it to say.
Right. So she's really doing the same thing that the others do. Got to start them young, I guess. And it's really sad because, like, I mean, I said I really don't know if this is scripted. I don't know if this is, she did it of her own volition or whatever. I have no idea. But it is really sad if it is, of her own volition, to see her like going down this trail, this rabbit hole, and she's just going to become another ID proponent. And that's sad. It's sad watching that happen in someone so young, that really is the actual failure of the school system. The failure is not teaching kids how to think, right? It's not teaching them to critically evaluate data. I think I'm pretty sure she was referring to the one that we mentioned earlier, because that one was the one that describes exactly what she said. Well, sort of. But anyway. So far, you're right, RJ. We don't know she's a creationist. We don't know that. We don't know that she's a young Earth creationist. All we know right now is that she's relying on ID proponent stuff.
Well, I think she said as much, because she started out with how important her faith was to her.
Well, yeah, but we don't know if she's a creationist per se. She could be like a Catholic or a Protestant or something and be an ID proponent. There's nothing wrong with that.
Would be going against the Pope, Jackson. The Pope has decreed that evolution is a fact, and Catholics should accept it.
I've met Catholic creationists on Twitter.
Yeah, me too.
Or Orthodox or whatever.
Which is
anyway,
kind of weird.
To exactly the fossil record and genetic and molecular biology. So that was really helpful.
Cool. Okay, so I'm so eager to hear. Cool. So what did you find? what did you compare in your study, and what were your overall findings?
So I found that more often than not, the textbook was misleading students. I grouped certain amounts of quotations. So I picked quotations just based on their ability to accurately and concisely describe what the textbook was getting at. And I grouped them into 3 categories, which were misrepresented, underdeveloped, and well-aligned. And so I found that more often than not, they fell into the underdeveloped or misrepresented category. So when it came to the fossil record, I analyzed this lineage of whale evolution that was initially proposed by Stephen Jay Gould, who was a late evolutionary paleontologist. And Jonathan Wells spoke to this in his book, Zombie Science. And I found that it was misrepresented because those animals are distinct. They are their own species, their own organisms, and it's not a complete lineage. Specifically, they try to make it seem like this animal, it's called Rhodocetus, lived on land and underwater, and they want it to be this perfect transition from on land and underwater to fully aquatic animals. But it's missing the link there between on land and underwater.
This is very garbled, but for what I can parse out, she just said they're not transitional because they are their own species, which is... What does that even mean? Like, it's a non sequitur. It doesn't even follow. Like, all right.
Fun fact.
Yeah, yes, they are different species, but all right.
Fun fact: Ra is working on a video about whale evolution. So maybe we should.
Oh, neat.
I mean, maybe we should tell her about that and have her go watch that. But that's obviously, yeah. I think Arn may have an agenda.
Oh, is he making another series like the arachnids? Because that was pretty neat. The arachnids.
I think it's going to be a one-off, but I'm not entirely sure.
Okay, can I read something from the so this is from the Wikipedia page. They're summarizing a Gingrich et al. 2001 paper, and this is relating to Rhodocetus's hind limbs, if I may. Quote, hind limb material including right femur, patella, tibia, possible partial fibula, 2 virtually complete foot skeletons including tarsal and metatarsal bones and phalanges. The astragalus, or heel bone, is characteristic of artiodactyls with a deep tibial trochlea restricting lateral movements and a large calcaneal tuber, posterior part of the heel bone, providing leverage for powerful extension. The metatarsals and phalanges are very long and thin and cannot have been weight-bearing, suggesting that Rhodocetus was predominantly aquatic and on land must have walked on the plantar surface of the tarsals. The shape of the metatarsal and phalanges reveal that these bones could be tightly compressed during flexion and widely separated during extension. Okay, so again, it could do both. It could move on land and in water.
Like a seal, basically, right?
Yeah,
more
like
or less. Yeah.
But also, yeah, you're right, Ness. Like, what the heck does their separate species mean? What does that mean? Does she expect us to find
it's not transitional enough? Like they must blend into each other as one species.
I guess
she's expecting. I don't know. Like
we have to have
and she also does the Dr. Banjo thing. Like, oh, they're not a complete lineage. It's not a complete lineage. There are still gaps remaining. Yeah. All right. We heard this before.
So she's literally just copying word for word Jonathan Wells. That's it. There's nothing more to her. Okay,
can we go back a few seconds just to get all of it?
Because I want 10 seconds, Peter, please.
Yes, just 10 seconds. Making sure we don't do anything.
Yeah.
Let's see if this works.
And underwater, and they want it to be this perfect transition from on land and underwater to fully aquatic animals. But it's missing the link there between on land and underwater to fully aquatic, because that's a pretty big jump. And they want to say that it can be connected with absolutely nothing. And recently they actually found that Rhodocetus didn't have a tail, and it likely didn't have didn't have legs,
Wait a second,
or arms and feet, and that was found in 2007. But the textbooks are still using that illustration.
Wait,
so that's
wait, pause.
Stop.
Hold on. Yeah. Isn't that like a Kent Hovind thing that it didn't have a tail fluke? Isn't that a Kent Hovind argument? I'm like 95% sure I've heard Kent Hovind say that.
I think I have as well. And I told you.
Yeah, also it looks like it did have this article, or it says right here, the shape of the metatarsal and phalanges reveal that these bones could be tightly compressed during flexion and widely separated during extension, which would imply webbing, right?
Yeah, some sort of webbing. Yeah.
Yeah, that would imply webbing. So what on earth is she talking about?
Like, is she accidentally conflating like the old illustration of Pakicetus? Like you remember, like the first illustration of Pakicetus was it was like more very aquatic, right? And over time, it was found to be more terrestrial. Maybe she's conflating with that. I don't know.
Oh, that's right. It wasn't Rhodocetus. It was Pakicetus. Yeah. But again, I think that was a Kent Hovind argument that someone.
Yeah.
Because like Kent Hovind says that he says the whole. What'd you say?
Okay, sorry. It was like about Pakicetus, like in the first discovery of Pakicetus, it was probably like a cranium with a few.
Oh, you're roboting.
Right.
Sorry. Your mic is not getting enough juice.
Also, from Savage Answers and Jawist Cobra for $2, a leopard seal doesn't have a tail fluke either. Very true. It sure doesn't. Yep. Are you good, Nestle? Is everything okay?
I hope it's now okay.
It sounds fine.
Sounds fine. But I was saying about like I think the first discovery of Pakicetus was like only a cranium with a few teeth, like a partial skull, right? And like Philip Gingrich says, like it was based on the characters. It mostly ate fish because of the teeth, the morphology of the teeth, and also the ear structure, the auditory bulla of whale. So at first they thought it was very aquatic, and then the artistic illustration was very Rhodocetus-like, right? Like it was like swimming in water with webbing and a tail fluke. But then later we found that it's more terrestrial than it was originally thought. And maybe she's referring with that. I think she is mistaking the story of Pakicetus with the Rhodocetus. I think she is.
Oh, okay. RJ points out that a young Earth creationist is making the Rhodocetus tail argument. Fascinating. Totally surprising. Who could have seen this coming? Wow. Shock and awe. Okay, anyway, we can keep going.
Well, in my opinion. And they still have the tree of life in there. I didn't focus on that in my paper, but it's its own topic. But yeah, I thought that it was interesting that they still kept that illustration in there. And then when it came to genetic and molecular biology, I was able to explore a lot more in that realm in my paper. And I found that more often than not, in that section, it was misrepresented and underdeveloped as well. The one thing that was well aligned is the fact that we have, we share a lot of our DNA with other organisms. There's only about a 1% difference in our DNA to that of a chimpanzee. And at first glance, that seems like, oh my gosh, that's huge evidence for evolution. Like, if our DNA is so similar, then we have to be related to them. But I use this analogy in my paper.
That's how that works.
Our DNA is 50% identical to a banana, but we don't walk around saying that we're part banana. And the same goes for, lettuce. We don't say that we're
not
lettuce.
Part chimp either.
So in that 1% difference, an article by Science.
Okay, again, she's in like no position whatsoever to be making any of these accusations at the textbooks when she has obviously no background in this subject. And again, she's like 18. So like I don't expect her to be an expert in genetics or in paleontology, but she's acting like she is. She's critiquing textbooks which are written by people who either are like biologists or have degrees in education, and she, an 18-year-old, is acting like she's smarter than them. And she's making these arguments which are just trash creationist arguments, just run of the mill intelligent design garbage. That's all this is. The bit about we're 1% like, or we have 1% difference with chimps. Okay, the reason for that obviously is we share a much closer common ancestor with chimps than we do with bananas or cabbages or whatever. That doesn't mean we're part chimp, because we aren't. Chimps are our sisters. They're our sister extant clade. They are not our ancestors. The only way to think that like we're part chimp is if you thought that we are descended from chimps, which we aren't, obviously. But the way she's acting is like she thinks that that's an argument, that like people think we are descended from chimps. At least that's the way it sounds. That's the way it sounds to me. There was something else I want to say, but I forgot what it was.
That is a young Earth creationist term, because if you recall the evolution of humans, the picture that you always get, they will say it started out with the chimp, and then
it started out with a chimp. How did it end up like this?
Yeah, I mean, so
it was only a chimp.
It's a claim that they make a lot, that we evolved from chimps because we have we have DNA that close. I mean, that's pretty much what every young Earth creationist will tell you.
Mm-hmm. Right, we're descended from modern monkeys, which obviously we aren't. It just makes me real sad. These are such bad arguments.
Well, I mean,
okay, anyway.
Jackson, you must have heard the claim that Lucy was just a chimp.
Yeah. Oh, I've definitely heard that. And I love when they there was also a like a later study that where they thought one of her like cervical vertebrae or whatever was actually from like a baboon, but it turns out it was her cervical vertebrae. It was not a baboon. But the creationists just say, "Aha, it was a baboon," and they run off. And it's like, no, no.
They were hoping for.
She's like an inch away from asking how chimps exist if we're still descended from them. Right? Yeah. Dalton's right. Yeah.
Well, if it had been baboon-like, the creationists would love another Piltdown, man. That's
right. Yeah. Evolution is like Transformers. Very true, Riley.
Okay. Continue.
Yeah. Yes.
Science explored whether or not this 1% truism should be taken out of textbooks altogether. And they found that on top of that 1%, there were millions of differences in DNA base pairs, which play a huge role in our development and function. They found that there were 17.4% distinctions in our cortex connections. And so the 1% really is what makes us human.
Pause. Okay. Let's think about this for a minute. Let's do some math. Okay. Just a smidgen of math, which I'm also pretty sure she took in high school. If our genome, the human genome is pretty close to the same length as chimps. Okay. So it's what? It's like 6 billion base pairs diploid, right? Isn't it? Something like that?
Yeah, I was just a haploid is 3.02 billion, I think.
Okay, so it's like so diploid were like 6 billion base pairs. Okay, so 6 million, 100 times.
Also, it's very recent news that the Y chromosome has been fully sequenced, finally.
Nice.
So the full genome has been sequenced. Yeah.
So 100,000. Okay, so 1% of 6 billion is 60 million. Okay? There can be 60 million base pair differences between us and chimps, and that's 1% of our genome. 60 million. Yeah. Okay? Like legitimately, this is dumb. This is so sad. The other thing was she said there were like different connections in our like cortex or whatever. What on earth does the way that our neurons are arranged in our brain?
Hippocampus minor.
Yeah, what on earth does that have to do with the number of base pair differences in our genomes? Like what?
She's going so far back in time. She's using the Richard Owen argument. The hippocampus minor.
Right? Yeah. Like what? Huh? I don't know. This is so stupid. Okay.
All right.
And it speaks volumes to our individuality. In the textbook, it doesn't reflect that. It doesn't even note it. It just says, "Oh, we're similar, so we must be related." And I also want to bring up Douglas Axe really quick because he did a lot of research on protein folding.
Oh,
and before you can even get a protein chain, protein folding has to take place. And he found overall that the chance of getting a functional protein chain is as low as 10 to the 65th power. And there are 10 to the 77th atoms in the Milky Way galaxy. So that basically just goes to show that
so let's pause again.
The chance of getting
Okay, so the thing with the Douglas Axe, so basically what he did was there's a good post on the Panda's Thumb, which is not to be confused with of Pandas and People, the creationist textbook. Panda's Thumb is a blog where a bunch of different like anti-creationist people have posted lots of really good stuff. Go check it out. Okay, so someone on Panda's Thumb like way back did an article about the methodology of Douglas Axe's 1 in 10 to the 65th number. Basically what he took was he didn't even take an entire protein. He took a sample of a particular protein that is highly highly susceptible to like breaking apart as a result of temperature changes, and used that as his protein. So not the normal protein.
So is the heat shock protein?
Maybe. I don't remember quite which protein it was, but it was a very sensitive protein that he took. He made it intentionally like as hard as it possibly could be, because it's not about getting actual data. It's about just making scary numbers. And there was a paper I read a while back that cited the Douglas Axe paper and said like it was basically like, yeah, this number has been put forth, but it doesn't really make sense in the light of experimental data, because it's relatively easy to like take a bacterial population or a fly population or something like that and evolve them selectively, apply some selective pressure to them, and they become different. Like some proteins in their body have to change for that to happen. And obviously there aren't like 1 in 10 to the 65th individuals in those populations. So the actual number has to be much lower, right? It doesn't make any sense. So. Anyway.
The functional protein chain is super low. So that's overall what I found. Yeah, in a nutshell.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've heard a couple of analogies on this before. One of them is the idea that, just because when you mentioned the fossil record, just because you found the island of Hawaii in the middle of the Pacific doesn't mean that you have found a pathway that you can walk from the west coast of the US over to Asia, right? There's huge gaps in the fossil record between so-called transitional forms.
He's literally doing
each
the
of those
Dr.
transitional
Banjo
forms
thing.
really are quite unique and different than, anything else in the record.
He's just doing the Dr. Banjo. That's what he's doing. Just saying.
He's also debunking the flood, because how did the animals get there if you can't walk there? Sorry, I had to throw it in.
Like you were saying about the 1% difference. I mean, even that percentage is arguable, but even if you accept a 1% difference, the question would naturally be, well, what are the 1% differences? What are those changes, and how do they affect the overall phenotype? So
that's like the
great.
whole point of genomics.
I'm so impressed by the research that you were able to do on this. What do you think that your findings in general, what do they suggest about the quality of evolutionary education in high schools?
So I'll just start off by saying that nowhere in my paper or in my intentions in sharing my findings do I want to suggest that evolution should be taken out of textbooks totally, because I think that students should be able to decide for themselves how they came to be, and we should propose a lot of different theories that are based in science. And so, yeah, I think that what I found just goes to show that there might be a little bit of an...
Did you notice that she said it shouldn't be taken out totally?
Right. Just
most
like
of it
shaved down to almost nothing.
Yeah,
most of it should be
taken
taken out, but not all of it.
Mm-hmm.
I just looked up. I just looked up here the Pendastom blog that you mentioned, and it says that X basically mutated a protein to make it more temperature sensitive.
Yes.
In order to and because of that, and because it's more temperature sensitive, it also is very vulnerable to mutation. So so basically, most proteins are rather robust against amino acid substitution. So the fitness peak is a bit like a very broad peak, basically. So it can change around, but it will still stay mostly at the top. But X, by making it temperature sensitive, the peak became very narrow, basically, and very sensitive to mutations. That's what he did. Yeah.
Yeah. So he intentionally like screwed the protein so that he would get a ridiculous number.
Yes, basically.
Yep.
Agenda here, because there's been a lot of challenges to these lineages, such as the whale evolution proposed by Stephen Jay Gould, that have been met with, I think, is valid criticism and critiquing, and the textbooks don't, they still have it in there, but I think that they should at least suggest what might be faulty about it, so students can, that's the truth, and they deserve to know that. But yeah, I think that there's just a little bit of...
What did she mention? So I missed that. What did she mention about Gould?
Well, she said Gould proposed the whale lineage, which no. Gould is not a whale expert. That was like Thewison and Gingrich back in the 80s who were working on the whale stuff, or 80s, 90s, whatever it was.
Again, I mean, it may be too much, but I think she should have make notes, because the way she talks about it, like, she may be confusing between different people and different things. It often feels like.
Yeah.
To me, at least. Yeah.
RJ says she thinks it was Gould proposing that suggests that she's filtering the view secondarily. 100%. Yeah, no, she's not. I mean, she said she was reading like Icons of Evolution. So she was reading Jonathan Wells. She's just taking the stuff he wrote, and she's just saying, oh my gosh, he said whale evolution not real, and the textbook has whale evolution in it, so the textbook is wrong. It's like, no, he's an idiot.
Do you know who was the first person who proposed Wells to send it from like the Artiodactyl?
Oh, I mean, like Haeckel was doing that back in
the
late 1800s. Here, one of his trees, it's hard to find, but every so often I come across it, where it's like he groups whales like sister to artiodactyls. But and that was in part because in Darwin's day they had Dorodon and Basilosaurus, so they had whales who had hind limbs, which had the astragalus. But then it wasn't until like the late 80s into the 90s when Thewison and Gingrich started finding like Pakicetus, Ambulocetus, Rhodocetus, Myocetus, all those guys, in like Pakistan and India. So she did no research. She didn't do any research. She just said, literally all she did was, Jonathan Wells said this, and I agree with it. That's all she did.
Well, it lines up.
She did not fact check any claims.
It lines up with her worldview. Just saying.
That's true.
Okay, we have.
That's true.
About 8 minutes left.
Oh, we can finish this.
We can finish it, I think.
Well, you're in good company. I'm sure Jonathan Wells would agree with you. He's, spent many years working on this, and I'm sure he'd agree that there's definitely an agenda that's keeping these kind of undead icons
I wonder where
in the
the agenda is
textbooks
coming
year
from.
after year. So
yeah.
You mentioned, a minute ago that you think that students deserve to know the truth on this. So I'm curious, compared to other scientific topics or
I want to know what method she used to find out what the truth is. Because that's a method she hasn't disclosed yet, even though it was asked at the beginning.
No, nope. Wrong.
Like I would like to review what her paper or whatever she wrote. Because we cannot adequately discuss what she wrote down because she doesn't give much details.
Well, I mean, it's true, but I'm willing to bet that a large proportion of it is really just slavishly repeating Jonathan Wells tropes.
Copy paste.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, just copy
paste. And she did a fire hose of arguments, like a rapid fire, for jumping from transitional species to the protein probability, and then next to Stephen Jay Gould, apparently. Yeah.
And it's like, none of these are new, right? We've heard all this garbage before. These are not novel. She's not finding anything. She's like a reverse Greta Thunberg. No, hold on a second. There was a reverse Greta Thunberg, and she turned out to be a Nazi. I shouldn't say that. A National Socialist. Shouldn't say that on, because I accidentally got Dapper Stream demonetized the other day.
Oh no.
The conservatives tried having their own Greta Thunberg, and it went very bad. She was immediately outed as a National Socialist, and she disappeared shortly thereafter. It didn't go very well.
So you might was she cancelled by her own part,
I think
group, or?
Well, I think the general public kind of canceled her, and then she just kind of slipped out.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Funny how
it was very funny.
Funny how that always happens. I mean,
what was that? What's that? People like saying on Twitter, every accusation is a confession.
Yeah.
So you have all these conservative people who are who say things like the trans people are groomers or whatever. Then it always turns out that a week later, so and so got arrested for grooming children. It's always stuff like that.
Yeah. I think I've also heard one lawmaker who was fighting against the sex education. They are also in favor of child marriage as well.
Oh yes, yeah. Funny how those beliefs tend to overlap, isn't it? Huh.
We don't have to mention Bobert, do we?
No,
I still find that hysterically funny. But I mean,
I hate that is now
the way she said
over it, and I hate it.
Yeah, the way she said it on TV, she was acting eccentric. Just keep that in mind.
She said it was a first date.
Yeah, keep that in mind. Next time you fondle your lover, that's being eccentric.
Yeah, in public at a Beetlejuice
showing. With kids.
Is that really what gets you going? Beetlejuice? I mean, okay.
Can you imagine if it was a Democrat and
100%.
And also an LGBT Democrat? They would be talking about this for years.
100%. No, at this point, if I hate that, Dalton. I hate that. Yeah, they're just ghouls. They know they're ghouls. Everything is double standard. If you have to go high, but we can go low, because they don't care, right? They don't care about accountability or responsibility, or being accurate in the lies that or the claims they make. I guess they don't care. They don't have to care. They're not paid to care. They're paid to reinforce the narrative that their constituents wants them to reinforce. All right, let's try to finish this.
Areas, do you feel like it's especially important that high school students are taught accurately about evolution in particular?
I do. I really do. So evolution, it's weird because it's super controversial, but we don't really talk about it anymore because there's so many other things going on right now. But
what?
Sometimes it seems to go hand in hand.
What? Have you been on social media lately? We don't talk about it anymore. I mean, damn. Okay, I now know her last name.
The joke that Smitty was making. Yeah,
I get her last name. Her last name has to be Dunning-Kruger. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
And with people who are theistic, and then there are people who think there's no way that evolution can align with the theistic worldview. And so it is really controversial in that sense. But I think that especially high school students, they're in such a pivotal time in their life because they're forming their worldview. They're trying to figure out who they are, what their purpose is. And evolution is a theory on the origin of life. And so I think that that's huge to answering those questions because, you know, some people don't want to admit this, especially not the textbook. It doesn't speak to this at all.
Do we need to point out that evolution isn't about the origin of life?
She doesn't care. She doesn't know.
It's every creationist who makes that claim. Every single one.
But if evolution is true, assuming it doesn't align with a theistic worldview, which I don't think that it does because it's a random process, but assuming that it is true, then we arose from purely
she's a creationist.
And
confirmed.
If you want to say a random process, which means we don't really have a logical purpose. We weren't wanted. We weren't planned. And so I
think
she's a
young Earth creationist.
How do you get from evolution to not having a purpose? That's one
RJ,
of the dumbest
she's definitely a creationist.
Yeah, she is.
They're like, I agree up to this point. Like we couldn't be sure because she didn't say anything overtly creationist. This is overtly creationist. She's just out and out. Yep.
Mm-hmm. But she probably has. She probably has the book that we reviewed. Not too long ago.
She probably does. Yeah.
Really dive into that, they'll realize it has huge implications for their purpose, and they deserve to be able to form their worldview in this time of life. Yeah. So I think it's huge.
That's great. Yeah. I've seen from your paper and from our conversation that you've also learned a little bit about intelligent design, how it offers a different...
No, it's not about the purpose thing. It's that she said evolution doesn't align with theism. She's a hardcore theist, but she doesn't think evolution aligns with theism, so she rejects evolution. She's a creationist. Not the purpose thing. I don't care about that. That's not what I'm talking about. Okay.
Hypothesis for the origin of life and the complexity of life. And I'm curious from what you've learned about intelligent design, whether you feel like it does, compared to evolution, it does set students up well for understanding their purpose, their value, and those sorts of things.
Yeah, I definitely think that it would be a great thing to include in school curriculum because, you know, a lot of people are concerned that it would push a little bit of religion on students, which I understand. But if they were to truly look into the theory, I think that they would find that that's not true because it suggests only that there is an intelligence and that there is a mind behind the creation of the universe. Because, you know, if we look at the world around us, it's so complex. You know, each species is so different from the other.
Look at the trees.
And, you know, we are perfectly aligned between the sun and the moon. And I think that
cloud is making a happy face.
With
Don't
so
you
many,
believe?
if not all of the scientific principles we know to be objectively true. And I think that it would offer students who are questioning their worldview, questioning their purpose, it would offer them a lot of peace and a lot of hope to know that there is a possibility they were planned.
Yeah.
So, okay. So, listen. On the one hand, she's saying intelligent design has nothing to do with religion. It's just the science. We're just following the data. But she immediately, in the same breath, follows it up with but it brings purpose. Maybe people would just look around and see it brings purpose to your life and meaning and like
it slowly becomes an existential issue with them. Yeah,
it's much better.
In her case, it was immediate.
Jackson, it's much better to teach students that they're worthless and deserving of hell. I mean, that's
what I tell my students.
Yeah,
especially after I see their grades.
You get an F.
That's probably the most uplifting thing you can tell your student.
Okay, I have never ever bought the intelligent design could be aliens or something like that. I have never bought that. I know intelligent design people say it. I'm sorry. If you guys wanted to push that, you shouldn't have let the wedge document get out, because I do not and will not ever believe you. I'm sorry. I won't.
I'm sure there is like that one individual who was bought by the whole, like, oh, it's just a secular thing like that. Like, but the movement started out as explicitly religious. That's how the movement started. Yeah.
All the major people in it are religious. The wedge document states explicitly that it is about bringing like theism into schools and into government. Like, you dropped the ball on that one, guys. There's no putting the toothpaste back in the tube on that one. Sorry.
It's also funny that they keep that as an option.
Good analogy.
When we had Ben Stein cutting the interview with Dawkins, where it was implied that Dawkins thought that it was aliens, and then they mocked him about it. It's so weird.
Actually, that's a really good point, Peter. That's a really good point. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, right. The intelligent design video mocked Dawkins for allegedly, he wasn't obviously, but for saying, well, maybe aliens are the intelligent designers. They mocked him for that.
Yes.
And now you're telling me a decade or maybe 2 decades later that actually aliens are okay as designers? No. Sorry. Again, like,
you can't write this stuff. It's if you would make this into a movie, no one would think it's believable.
Yeah. No, it's like, I'm sorry, guys. You guys have, like, you're too open. If you want to pretend that this is all like, unbiased, just you're just following the facts. I'm sorry. You're way past that by now. You've long passed that point. You had your chance, but C design proponents really tripped you up on that one. Okay.
Next time, do a macro search accurately and control. You use your keyboards or key control shortcuts. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, well, we got 5 minutes left.
And they were
good.
Made
we did it
by somebody on purpose.
Yeah, so I know that in many schools in America, intelligent design is not mentioned at all in the classroom, and it's not something that we actually encourage of schools because of the current state of the debate. On the other hand, I'm curious if you were in front of a room full of high schoolers right now, and there were no rules, and you were able to speak on this subject of evolution, intelligent design.
I like it when you say when there are no rules, because you couldn't say it when there are rules, right? Just pointing out what you just said.
Mm-hmm. The current scientific evidence from the most credible sources that you can find, what would you want them to know?
That's a great question, because I didn't have an opportunity to talk to my class. I was only in front of my teacher when I gave my presentation at the end of the year. I think that I would just let them know that it probably seems totally strange for anybody to be telling you that science and faith and purpose can go hand in hand. But they can, and intelligent design really speaks to that. I think I would just encourage them to reflect again on how complex our universe is, how complex we just as an individual are, all of our thoughts.
She's literally just saying, look at the trees.
We function, how we process, how complex that is. And to ask themselves if it makes more sense that all of this is, product of random chance and mutation, Or maybe does it make sense that we were designed by an intelligence?
She's just a talking
And I think
head.
I would
She's just a
encourage
talking
them
head.
to question things that they learn in school, because
No
that's
thoughts.
what I did,
There are
and
no thoughts.
I have learned so much, and I'm so grateful for that. It's okay not to think exactly like your peers, because I was definitely met with some criticism when people found out this is what I was pursuing. But it's okay. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
What are you up to now? So you've graduated high school.
Right,
Do you have plans to continue studying?
I don't care. I don't care what she says.
As if students aren't taught that that biology is complex. We are being taught that biology is very complicated. Like, trust me.
All right, we can go back to the 3 screens. So basically, she didn't do any research. She just copied what some intelligent design proponents and possibly creationists, we don't really know. Yep. Notice no chronology, no 6 day, etc. Well, okay. I mean, that's true. She didn't say that. I think she basically outed herself when she said evolution goes against theism.
And with the whole
like she's a creationist.
With the whole purpose thing and values, which have nothing to do with evolution. I mean, she's a creationist, no doubt.
At least we know that like the issue is an existential issue to her.
Right.
The question.
It's not about science.
Yeah.
And it's sad because for some, it is part of their identity. And if they were to lose it, they would need to reinvent themselves, basically, need to find out who they are. And to me, that's the saddest part of indoctrinating your kid with young earth creationism and fundamentalist Christian values, because the moment they figure out the truth, it's really hard for them to figure out who they are. It's so driven in to their identity. It's really hard to let go and to find an actual purpose, for instance.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh well. Sad stuff. She's
it is.
And I guarantee in a few years we're gonna see her, writing articles for the Discovery Institute. She's gonna be on PragerU. She's just the next generation. Now, I will say, on the plus side, the like Zoomers, like myself, and also like Natalie, are incredibly non-religious as a group. We are like overwhelmingly non-religious, and I'm willing to bet that's only going to continue because that's been the trend for the past several decades, as we've just been getting less and less and less and less religious. I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. And I think in large part that probably has to deal with the fact that so many people live such difficult lives, like paycheck to paycheck, and it's hard to find housing, and it's hard to make ends meet and all this other stuff. And like people are more focused on themselves, and stuff like that. And also it's a lot easier to fact check claims, or at least it should be. But Natalie sure didn't. She did not fact check anything. So anyway, well, it's 9:00 or my time. I don't know about you heathens, time traveling. But thank you guys for indulging me on this video. Next week, I'm pretty sure we'll have another show next week. We should be going back to our other class. We're going back to class, and finishing our lecture.
Go back to school again.
Oh, goody!
Hey.
Yep, back to school again. Alrighty. Well, thank you everybody in the live chat for watching, and we are going to sign off for tonight.
See you next week.